Can you see my screen here?
Yes, we can.
Uh, Full screen mode. Okay, hi everyone. So yes, my name is Timo. Good to see you. I work as a tech lead within OASC on the DS4SSCC project, and I am also active as a business liaison within the city of Ghent. So I work for the digital agency in the city of Ghent. It's called District 9. And as such, I have some experience in the practical implementation of data spaces within local communities. So this is just a quick introduction to set the scene. Why are we building data spaces? A little bit of legal background. I'm sure my colleagues will elaborate on this a little bit further. But many of what we are doing right now can be brought back to the 2020 EU strategy for data, in which the Commission envisioned to create a single market for data throughout Europe, with, of course, very relevant implications for well, European GDP, but of course the reuse of data within the quadruple helix. And it has set out quite a lot of programs to actually realize a single market for data. So we have the start with the digital decade, and then most of you will be familiar with the approval of the Data Governance Act. Within this Data Governance Act, we see a lot of terms that are already very relevant for data spaces. The concept of data intermediaries, being able to exchange data with private and public companies. And this has been crystallized out further in the Data Act. In the Data Act, which provides pointers on how to set up basically data spaces, who can use which data under which conditions. Of course, in order to actually implement the provision, we need quite some support, and we can see that a lot of supporting organizations, such as Gaia-X, but also international organizations such as the International Data Spaces Association and BDVA, have been set up in this domain, so to speak. And very relevant for us is the coordination and support action from the European Commission that is called Data Spaces Support Center. This is an action that is supporting the creation of data spaces throughout Europe, and is very actively supporting not just the data space for smart cities and communities, which DS4SSCC is about, but also data spaces within other domains such as the Green Deal, energy, and so forth. A lot of what we'll be talking will be built on the recommendations by the Data Spaces Support Center. But I will leave the nitty-gritty and the formal definitions out of this introduction. Just want to point to some relevant documentation on this slide. You can read up on the European definition of a data space, the Data Space Support Center's knowledge base, and very relevant, which we'll dive into a little bit further, is the DSSC Blueprint. And of course, for the data space for smart and sustainable cities and communities project, DS4SSCC, we have the inventory. This basically outlines all of the building blocks relevant for data spaces specifically tailored to local governments. And also builds on the prior research that has been done when it is for SSCC preparatory action. What is a data space for smart communities? I think many of you will be familiar with data platforms. So I think a lot of city operators or either its local governments or their partners are operating data platforms in the city, which already brings together a lot of data, not just from the city itself, but from relevant agencies, utility companies, and so forth. We recognize different types of platforms. Of course, there's the classical open data portals that are present, but there might be IoT platforms in place and other kinds of data platforms in place as well. Now, we want to leverage the existence of these platforms and turn them into actual data spaces. Data spaces can exist on different levels. Of course, if you're talking on the local level, this is a data space, could be defined here as a data or a set of data platforms together with a governance framework through which all participants can access the data space and know very clearly which are the provisions through which they can access different kinds of data sources. Of course, on a local level, this is already relevant. Think about organizing mobility on a local level, getting an idea of the current roadworks and so forth. This is usually not something that can be operated by the local government alone. So different actors have to combine efforts on a local level in order to create a local data space. Obviously, this is quite a small data space, but already it has some clear advantages over just having a data platform. What we want to realize within DS4SSCC is a true European data space for smart communities that is actually federating a lot of local data spaces. So this kind of federation is not easy, but will give us some big advantages over, for instance, large utility companies, energy grids, and so forth, in order to provide some leverage through national or multinational players to access and to be part of this European data space for smart communities. Of course, we cannot do this without the local data spaces, and that is why you're here as pilots. You are building local data spaces which can form the seed of a true European data space for smart communities. You probably know this picture. This is the European Commission on the vertical or domain-specific data spaces. I'm just putting it up here to provide some context on where DS4SSCC is positioned. On a local government management level, we don't just need access to one of these vertical data spaces, we actually need access to all of them. We like to draw the parallel with Destination Earth, which is a large ESA-funded project, which is building a digital twin for the entire planet, which in turn also requires access to all the vertical and domain-specific data spaces. But what we're doing on the local level also needs access to all these vertical data spaces, be it in a very limited geographical space. That doesn't mean that it's easier. While Destination Earth has its eye in the sky, so to speak, we are actually down with our boots in the mud trying to operate a city while connecting to these kind of data spaces. That was a very quick introduction from my side, so I would like to hand over to my colleagues, Sila, right now.
Thank you so much, Timo. I'll take over the screen sharing then as well. One moment. And you can confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see.
Very good. So good morning also from my side to everyone. My name is Sila Sepp. I serve as the head of urban data ecosystems at the Finnish Center for Smart Cities in Tallinn University of Technology. It's a mouthful. And Taltech is one of the partners here in the deployment project for the European data space for smart communities. You've probably been in touch with me previously through the open calls, but we're also taking the lead on the governance and legal aspects of the trainings. And my goal today is perhaps not so much go into the details of the governance aspects within the blueprint. We'll have several trainings prepared for you for this. But the first thing is to make sure that we are all understanding governance in the same way, because it's a quite big and quite loaded word as well. So what do we actually mean when we talk about governance? There's multiple different layers to that. We can talk about city governance, because of course the way how the different municipalities are organized and how services are, let's say, organized between the different cities is something that we need to take into account also when we talk about data sharing. Then at the same time, we're talking about smart cities and smart communities. Right away, the connection about how do we actually deploy different types of technologies, data in general, to improve the well-being of our citizens as well as the environment. And governance is a big aspect of that also. Then the third layer that we right away can talk about is data governance. I often call that this is more looking at governance from a technical perspective, because it's about how do we organize data throughout its life cycle, about how do we collect it, how do we store it, how do we also get rid of the data when we don't need that anymore, not to mention how it should be documented, described, all of that. And then we get to the last part of data space governance, which is in our core focus for these trainings as well as within the blueprint. But that doesn't mean that we should kind of forget about the three other layers. It provides the context for how do we also can work around data space governance throughout your pilot projects, as well as the deployment of the European data space for smart communities overall. So as mentioned, we will be focusing primarily on the data space governance during the trainings. And it has also, in addition, many different types of perspectives to look at governance, because governance in a way can be also considered as an operational and organizational context of what is the purpose for different partners to come together? What do they actually want to achieve? What are the different types of rules and principles that they should follow? How are decisions made, etc. So all of this kind of falls under governance, but it has also perspectives from business perspective. What are the actual collaboration models for value creation? How do we ensure that the interests from different participants are respected? And at the same time, we find the balance point, how to ensure also a level playing field for this setting. It also has connections for the legal perspective, meaning that we need to ensure regulatory compliance. We need to also ensure that there's actual legally valid assets, artifacts available that put governance in place, and you can rely on, fall back on those when needed. And of course, it has also connection points with the technical aspects, because the way and let's say the technologies that you deploy, the standards that you would deploy, it also has the linkage about to governance, meaning that who is actually in position to decide on which technologies should be used, how it should be also evolving throughout the life cycle of the data space, etc. So when we talk about governance, we should also keep all of those different layers in mind. Now, moving forward in terms of what do we mean when we talk about governance, is also a matter of like from whose perspective we're actually talking about it. The Data Spaces Support Center has provided this visualization in the early versions of the blueprint already, showing that there's multiple different levels from a participant level, the organizations actually involved within the data space. There is a level for the use case, the specific services that are developed through data sharing or so forth. Then there's also the governance for the overall data space, which is a systemic approach and environment in a way that doesn't include only, let's say, the technologies, the infrastructure, but it also includes all of those agreements and relationships between those organizations. And in often cases also actually individual people. And then finally, there's also the wider ecosystem level, which includes also, of course, norms that we and principles that we want to follow within the European ecosystem overall, best practices that would be used, etc. And all of those needs to be also taken into account. And it's not always easy to understand from which perspective we're talking about when we're talking or figuring out the governance details. But I want to give this mental model to you and use that also in the coming trainings to be a little bit more specific when we're going ahead. Here, we will be focusing primarily on the data space and use case levels because the use case, as the slide also shows, it's on the service level that you have also agreed upon to develop throughout its pilot. But then also, of course, we're not only looking for use cases, we're also looking for sustainable local and regional data spaces that you would deploy, and later on we would federate them for the European data space level. So we need to work on those two different levels at the same time. And in terms of the federated data space level, we will be focusing on that a little bit later, because we want to make sure that you can get going with your individual data spaces, and then make sure that later on we can find also the rationales for and the context for actually federation, that what data do you need and how those agreements should be made throughout the different pilots involved within this project. Mm-hmm. Moving then forward, when we talk about governance, there's a third layer to it, because also sometimes we can go into this schizophrenic view a bit about how do we even understand ourselves. Is the pilot as well as the deployment action for the European data space for smart communities a EU project with its own project rules, grant agreements, consortium agreements, etc.? And at the same time, we're actually developing a very solid thing about the data space initiative and data space itself, which should have its own governance framework, contractual agreements, sustainable business models, participants that want to also keep up that data space. So we need to also keep those two things in mind. So what we want to make sure also is that we don't overcomplicate things right away. So the recommendation, of course, is to keep things simple, but let's not also fall back only to the project rules, because that might also hinder our potential to ensure sustainability and scaling for these activities also once the project is over. So when you're developing it, let's make sure that you also actually develop it from the perspective that what is actually sustainable for your pilot site, and also to ensure that those interests would be feeding back also to the federated data space level. So there's a kind of section point between the two bubbles here is where is this, what does it mean for the governance, let's say, outputs or assets? Then one example could be that the consortium agreement that you agree upon yourselves could be also extended as the rule book for the starting phase, and then you can extend that later on to additional agreements once the project is over. The final part that I want to just allude to is that the governance is defined and described through the multi-stakeholder governance scheme that was developed in the preparatory action a couple of years ago. And it has more or less three sections: the code of conduct that describes the visions and principles, the roles and responsibilities of the participants within the data space, also the governance framework and structures, giving some options to choose from, and also referencing legal frameworks. But in that context also to take it into account that this was developed already some time ago, and this space or this landscape is moving very, very fast. So there's also lots of things that we need have already evolved and further clarified. So already during these next months, we are within the project reviewing the blueprint, revising it, and also will take some of those insights back to you through the trainings to make sure that you can also take those insights into practice. The very important part of the multi-stakeholder governance scheme is the data cooperation canvas that probably all of you are already familiar when you were preparing your application. And the main purpose for that is to make sure that you can identify specific needs for data sharing early on, define the purpose, and also use that canvas when, let's say, you need to double check or kind of go back to the drawing board with your participants to make sure that everybody is still aligned around this, as well as then, of course, lay out the technical and non-technical components needed for this data space. So it is very useful, especially on the use case level. And if you haven't already worked on this or filled out, then we recommend to do that now in the early phases of your pilot implementation. The final section of the governance scheme is about recommendations, what to do on the local, national, and European level, because also this is as we've talked, it's a systemic approach to data sharing, and it's definitely not an aspect that can be just fixed by technologies and some agreements. There's levels of data literacy, culture change, all of that. So we need to also take those a little bit more softer aspects in mind when moving forward with data space development. And those recommendations are useful to keep in mind there. In addition to the governance scheme and our own resources, as already mentioned earlier, the DSSC has also developed a sector-agnostic blueprint. When the preparatory action aligned its own resources with the version 1.0, since then there's been 2 iterations published. Today we have the version 2.0 is available with lots of useful insights, and this is something that we keep in mind also when we're aligning and updating our own blueprint. But just referencing that this is also for you to use when developing your pilot. I won't go anything more like detail to the multi-stakeholder governance scheme today, but you have the available training video from Justine, who was one of the authors for the multi-stakeholder governance scheme. If you haven't looked through this already, we definitely recommend to do so. And also, before the next training on governance, we would really appreciate if you could at least skim through the multi-stakeholder governance scheme, because then we can speed up a little bit and go deeper within the short trainings that we have available. So in couple of weeks on 10th of June, we have our first longer session on governance, talking through about the common purpose and how to also achieve balanced power dynamics within the data space. We'll go quite deep in terms of about how to, let's say, divide or allocate different roles and responsibilities within the data space, and the fact that you're already familiar with those by reading through the multi-stakeholder governance scheme, we can just go further faster. If the news haven't reached you already, there's just a quick reference to it that in September we have planned an in-person training that would also include business and governance focus sessions, and there we'll also continue then on other aspects. I haven't talked too much about legal today, but we have a dedicated session on talking through the regulatory compliance and also how to ensure different types of safeguards for your operations. But that date and time is still to be decided. So with that, I'll close here. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm available also to respond over chat. Thank you.
We will provide you a high-level overview about business models and value creation for data spaces, and more in particular, we will try to see how those business models can enables sustainable growth of smart communities. So not only a business model that helps a data space to survive, but also how a good business model can help the growth of a smart community that's using that local data space. As for all the previous presentation, this is a more high-level overview, and then at the boot camp, at this in-person training, we'll go much more in detail, also through your specific challenges, and try to solve them together through several workshops. Okay. So what is a business model, or what is a business model, and what is the purpose of a business model? Why would we like to have a business model for a data space? So here we have a generic we have a generic flow that holds for all data spaces. So the first step that happens is value creation. So it all begins with value creation when where input data is generated from city, from community operations. We can think of traffic patterns, for example, energy consumption. So this is the raw data, the raw resource that's then used to build a business model around it. You are all collecting this type of data through sensors, through smart infrastructure, through other digital tools that you are using. So once we have this input data, the next stage is value delivery. It's a process where data is used to develop specific solutions. So this is transforming raw data to actionable insight and solutions. If we take the same example, we can use traffic data to optimize smart transportation, or energy data to improve efficiency or energy management. So this is about turning data into practical services, developing practical services on top of data, and addressing some specific challenges that you have. Then the last step is value capture, which is about realizing the outcomes of these efforts. So, for example, this could take a very direct financial value, so that the city gets some revenue by offering premium services. Or it could be also some more generic social values, like improved mobility, reduced waste, better air quality, for example, or something like that. So this is benefits that are shared both by citizens and businesses. So it's important while you are developing your data space to think about these three steps of a business model, so that you really organize your data to be captured, and then at the end to create value. Yeah. Now, what are the key components of a business model for smart communities data spaces? The first two components are quite generic to all business models. So one is value proposition. I guess most of you that have worked in the business development area are aware of what a value proposition is. So it's about delivering real value, in this case, to citizens and businesses by leveraging data-driven services from the data space. So here we define solutions that address specific needs of the community. Okay? Then we have revenue models. So they are essential for the financial sustainability of the data space. This focus on how data and related services can generate financial value. You can think about subscription-based access, pay-per-use, analytical services, partnerships with private organizations, and so on and so on. Of course, especially at the beginning of a development of a data space, public funding, it's a very important component of a revenue model. But going forward, it's good to let's say top up that public funding with also some other approach. Then stakeholder engagement. So this is maybe a bit specific for data spaces. Also, if you read the generic blueprint, we will go through that in the trainings. This collaboration model, it's very important for the success of the business model, but also of the data space itself. So it's about engaging all the stakeholders, so citizens, businesses, authorities, to co-create solutions that are from one side effective, but also widely accepted by the community. So we create services, but we also create ecosystems where data is shared responsibly and used to improve the quality of life, services, and so on. And this is very related from what we have heard in the about governance. So governance and the business part should work together to define what is achievable, what is allowed, what is ethical, what should and what shouldn't be done. So there are constraints from both these non-technical parts of business models. So all these help us to build a sustainable and impactful data space business model. Yeah. Why are they essential for smart community data spaces? So we have already mentioned sustainability. Maybe it's important to emphasize that sustainability has two dimensions. One is the financial sustainability of the data space itself. So we need a robust business model to create and operate the whole data space infrastructure, but also to allow it to grow. And then on the other hand, we should not forget about supporting broader environmental, social, and economic goals of the data space. For example, services like energy efficiency, carbon footprint reduction, and so on should be a key part of the business model. So this is why we are talking about these two phases of the sustainability. Stakeholder collaboration, we also already mentioned. So it's effective business model in data spaces are based on collaboration, because there is a need for a lot of alignment between public, private, non-governmental actors, citizens, and so on. Stakeholder value. So of course, a business model must create value for all the stakeholders. Again, when you are building your data space, don't think only about the technical part, but at each step you should think what it brings to citizens, businesses, and in the broader sense to the community. So what are these data-driven services that really bring value? And then scalability. So as the city grows, as the demand grows, and so on, as our business models evolve, we have to think about scalability. So how can the whole concept grow and provide better and better services that meet evolving needs of the community. So in summary, we have these four elements that should work together to ensure that business model drive innovation, but also help to build smarter and more sustainable cities, right? And then last slide, it's a bit wider. So how this business model supports not only the operation and the involvement of the data space, but how it helps smart communities themselves to grow. So how it generates value beyond a surviving data space. So we one important component is that it enables innovation. So we have a good business model and a good governance framework. Create a space where new data-driven services can be developed, and these innovations then can address whatever challenges are there for improving the quality of life of citizens. So clear rules from both the governance and business side allow us to enable innovation on top of what we already have. Then they create revenue streams. So sustainable business model should help cities and companies to generate income from data sharing. Public-private partnerships are quite important, as we will see, and this ensures the financial viability of those initiatives, and they can also scale up. Attracting investment. So a strong business model attracts also funding to scale up, because if we have investors, they are more likely to support initiatives where we have clear strategies for value creation and where we have long-term sustainability. So if we say, okay, this is the governance, this is the business model, this is how it works, this is how it grows, it's much easier to attract private investment as well. And public-private collaboration, I mentioned briefly. So these models, similar to attracting investment, encourage partnerships between the public and the private sectors to enable this co-creation of solutions. So in summary, a good business model and of course governance, it's in a way the engine that can power growth of the smart community beyond financing the data space, but also helping to finance other initiatives by the community. That would be all from my side for the introduction. Again, please, when you are building your data space, developing and deploying your pilot, think also about these non-technical aspects, because they are very important for the pilots to go beyond the end of this project. We have the expertise. If we don't have maybe in our organization, we know where to find it to help you to build this non-technical part of the data space as well. And I would conclude with this. The next business training will be on the in-person boot camp, and in between, if you have any questions, talk to your mentors, and we will find a way to answer to that. So that's it from my side, Ursha.
Thank you, Flavio. Now I would continue with the presentation of Timo of technical components, and we can cover all the questions at the end when we also turn off the camera, and it could be more engaging.
Okay, I hope you can see my screen and also hear me.
Yes.
All right, so as been mentioned before, this is just an introduction. So this is I will give an introduction to the basics, the technical basics, and we can have a more in-depth discussion and training during the bootcamp. So for now, I will limit myself to the actual technical functionalities that you will need. The real implementations can be discussed later. I'll just give some quick pointers here. Excuse me. So sorry. Why are we setting up a data space? I think my colleagues sufficiently introduced this. We already discussed this as well as the positioning towards the other data spaces. Sorry. So I would like now to define the concept of the building blocks. These building blocks were defined firsthand by the DSSC, so the Data Space Support Center, and customized and tailored towards communities through the DS4SSCC preparatory action. So the building blocks that we refer to are accessible on the inventory. And they will contain already an overview of industry standard specifications and implementations that you can use, as well as their links to potential minimum interoperability mechanisms and some guidance on best practices. There are, within the data space blueprint, there are technical and non-technical building blocks. For this introduction, I will focus on 9 technical building blocks organized in 3 pillars. This is the overview of all the building blocks. So we see that they're organized in 3 pillars. On the left-hand side, we see data interoperability. This is all the building blocks that are related to actually being able to share data. The middle pillar is related to data sovereignty and trust, which means everything that has to do with the identification and authorization of participants to the data space. And then on the right-hand side, we have data value creation technical building blocks, which are building blocks that would help you to realize the value that Flavio just discussed in terms of a business model. We'll start from the right, because of course, the most important thing is that you are able to create value from the data space. So let's dive straight in. So the goal of the data value creation pillar, as defined through the DSSC, well, I won't read it for you, is just quickly to generate value and for participants to be able to enter into a data sharing relationship. This is an overview. So the first building block is related to the actual offering descriptions. So within your data space, you will be offering either data sources, but also potentially data services. And of course, for them to be... Sorry, Taylor, just muted you. Sorry for that, because I had an echo. I don't know where you are, but it looks like it makes sense for me to have an echo there. So the second building block here is on publication and discovery. How would you publish all these services in order for other people to discover them? And then finally, a quick introduction to what value creation services might be. The first building block, its goal is to have a description of your data sets or services. And this description may include various kind of attributes. Your participants will select a data source or a service potentially based on, for instance, geographical location, but also because of the terms and conditions that it might have. This technical building block will also provide some metadata on how to actually access the service or the data source, including ideally an endpoint URL. It might also include the operational metadata, such as attributes such as description, the creator, the prices, the pricing, the license, any kind of licensing or SLAs that may be relevant to the service or the data source. So quick recommendations. You will receive the slides, so you can go through them yourself if you wish to prepare. But I want to go too deep into this, just knowing that there are standards for general metadata and application domain specific ontologies that we would recommend you to use. As for the discovery part, it is essential that within your data space, participants provide a catalog of the services and the data sources that they are providing. A catalog, very simply, is a listing of assets that you wish to make accessible within the data space. And for this, we recommend using the DCAT standard and its many application profiles. And we would also recommend a cost-effective way of implementing this catalog, for instance, through using CCAN or any other data cataloging systems you already have in place. What are these value creation services? I just want to take a moment here to think about these, because we often say that, okay, data is the new gold. Combining and refining data creates value. That's all very true. But there are many other kind of services that you might provision within the data space. These services are not necessarily limited to actions that transform or analyze or generate data. They might also be any other kind of thing, technical things, such as, for instance, just providing compute power or providing or provisioning a virtual machine on which you can work with this kind of data. So data enrichment services, all these kinds of things are considered to be value-added services within a data space. Some recommendations, of course, it's important to think for each of the participants how they will create value, or in order for there to be an actual value proposition in the data space, such just as Flavio just detailed. Then we head over to the entire left-hand side of the technical building blocks, and we go into the data interoperability pillar. These building blocks provide resources to create a data offering that is interoperable. Of course, it's very important to do this because there is no use in provisioning a data source that nobody knows what it's about or cannot use in their system. So interoperability really is key in order to make the data space work. We identify, again, 3 technical building blocks. The first one are data models. The ways in which you would describe metadata about the data, not limited to operational metadata as we just saw, but also actual semantics for the individual data sources and the individual data points within those data sources. You will also need to provide data exchange capabilities. How to access this data, how to access these data sources that might not be limited to using an API, as we will see later, and some means in order to provide provenance and traceability, making sure that you can trace who is accessing your data, and if the data is unaltered, where it comes from, what is the process for this data to be released, and so forth. Very quickly, data models, I think most of you will be familiar with the concept, is basically the capability to add semantics to any kind of data point. So what does this data mean? That can be done through metadata, it can be done through linked data, but not necessarily. We identify different ways to provide this kind of semantics. A very important recommendation here is that there are so many ontologies and data models out there right now that it often does not make sense to build your own. Still, in many projects and data spaces, we see that a lot of data providers consider their data to be unique. That might be the case in some very specific niche cases, but please reuse what's out there in order for this data to be easily found. Another important recommendation, of course, is there is a minimum interoperability mechanism working group for data models. It is MIM21 representing data. We would warmly invite you as pilots to join this working group and also share your experiences, because this is what helps us create an interoperability space within Europe. Then for data exchange, as I mentioned, this is a way to have agreed mechanisms to exchange data between parties. The Data Space Support Center mentions the creation of a rule book for data space, and transmission is not necessarily simply providing an API. It might also be streaming data, subscription, PubSub-based data, WebSockets, and so forth. So it's very important to think about the right transmission method for your use case and for the data type that you are actually providing. Quite a lot of technical recommendations that we will go into later. Provenance and traceability. This is important for partly for security. So you need to know that your data has not been tampered with, and that its integrity is intact. But it also provides some ways to detail the business process behind the creation of the data, the intended use of the data, who is the owner, or how many different owners, how many hands this data has gone through. These are all provided within this technical building block. All right, and then we arrive at the third and final pillar, the data sovereignty and trust pillar, which is about really creating a trust network within a data space and making sure that all the participants of the data space are who they claim to be. And these technical building blocks provide means in order to install this trust network. Again, it consists out of 3 building blocks. The first one is on identity and attestation management. There's different ways, of course, to identify people. Typically within data spaces, we will have decentralized identity management, which is not that easy to set up, but is actually a requirement if you want to have an organically or let's say a federated data space that can expand without human interaction. There is a trust framework, so any kind of mechanisms that you would need to verify that any participant will adhere to certain rules. And then there are access and usage policies enforcement, which differs from the previous building block in the sense that this is related specifically to certain data offerings or service offerings that might have usage policies on them. And there are different means how to encode and formalize these usage policies to know which participant can access which resource and in which way. So identity and attestation management in order to identify data space participants and ideally doing this in a self-sovereign manner. The DSSC recommends the creation of a conformity assessment scheme. That means that there is a scheme through which anyone can, be it automatically or be it through human intervention, make sure that any participant is conform the requirements of the data space. the DSCC also recommends the use of verifiable credential and decentralized digital identities. And there is some documentation here on trust anchors, service providers, and very important as well is to describe the actual lifecycle management of data space participants. The classical technical implementation of identification is centralized through identity providers, using identity providers and maybe setting up a single sign-on environment. These are typical technologies in order to do that. To have decentralized identity management, we want to move through to technologies that are here on the bottom of the slide, such as decentralized identifiers and verifiable credentials, and some related protocols in order to install and verify them. Quick recommendations. Most of the pilots will have centralized identification in place. It is very important to build on top of this. So already you can start identifying within each of the parties, within each of the pilots, which are the let's say the trust registries, which are the account lists that you want to be using. Would you set up a new one, or would you have one governing authority within a pilot data space? And well, similar discussions you can already start having within the pilot right now. Then the second building block here is the setting up of trust framework. So this is actually after any participant has been identified and it is proven that it's conforming to the conformity assessment scheme. There also needs to be a way to authorize and have different kind of roles and capabilities defined for each of these data space actors. There might be different kind of roles, so not every participant is created equal within a data space, but it's also dependent, of course, on the type of pilot or the type of data space if you want to have different categories of participants. This building block provides, for instance, this conformity schema, which will allow, which details different ways of ideally automatically checking if any of the identified participants conforms to a specific role or a specific capability. Recommendations: keep it simple, as little requirements as possible. Don't have an overcomplicated hierarchical rights and rules kind of structure, because all of these will have to be documented and formalized quite rigidly. So limit the number of roles of participants to maybe one or two, or worst case 3 types or classes of participants. Then last but not least, of course, this is where everything comes together. This is the access and usage control policies that are described on a data source or a resource or a service level. Again, there are different ways to do this. When any participant tries to access any resource, there might be a specific decision context. How are you going to find out if the context of usage is applicable right here? There might be issues of consent management. If all of this is managed, then you still need to know if a participant is legally authorized to access the resource. So this might be based on contracts, licenses, or code of conduct. And then finally, you will have a technical agreement negotiation. So ideally, this is a kind of a machine readable kind of negotiation or a smart contract that can be enforced between the data provider and the data recipient. Typical implementations for this are role-based access control or attribute-based access control. Implementations might be key-lock or key-cloak. ODRL is a language to encode these kind of different roles, and OPA, or the Open Policy Agent, with its own kind of role formalization language, RIGO, are often very often used in this context. Again, our recommendations are to start by writing it out on paper, basically, drafting up the conformity scheme and drafting the legal requirements. Before implementing any of these authorization technologies, clearly document on paper the different categories and roles and types of interactions that you want to be able to organize within the data space. And also, as we mentioned earlier, try to find out already from the start which identification and access management tools any of the parties within the pilot already have in place. Because setting an entirely new directory of users, or a trust registry, as we call it, up in the short time your pilot will run might be complicated. Okay, I think we have some time for questions.